What's up everyone and welcome to the third tournament video in a row. Now you might be surprised at this because in the last video you could see that I got eliminated, but somehow I felt like playing another tournament right after. And today I'm going to be cheesing even harder than the last one. In the last one I went for sophisticated cheeses. Today I'm going to go for brutal cheeses, and this video is going to have almost everything you want from a cheese video. You're going to see me cheese with every single race. You're going to see me get out-cheesed. You're going to see me cheese a former world champion and play my best Protoss game against the world champion at the same time. It's going to be very epic. Let's begin. The first series is going to be against Prom, a 5.4k Korean Protoss player. The tournament format is going to be all best of threes, meaning first to two maps wins, besides the grand finals, which is going to be a best of five. Now, my own rules for my cheese for this tournament, as you know, I'm not always super strict because it is still a tournament, right? Is that I wanted to play Protoss, Zerg, Terran every single game. So I'm not going to play random. I'm specifically going to pick Protoss first, then Zerg, then Terran. And I wanted to do at least a very strong one base opener every single game. So let's say the game gets completely chaotic and it's a pretty even game, but there's no chance of me winning with an attack, then I will allow myself to transition. But I want to make sure that I at least open with a pretty hardcore one base attack or proxy or cheese, something along those lines. Now, I don't know much about Prom. Similar to Ateshi from the last video, I just imagine that Korean Protoss players are always going to be a little more aggressive, a little cheesier. And I decided that this was a very good opportunity to try my 3-gate opener against a Korean Protoss. Because so far, it has worked pretty well against European Protosses. I beat some 6k players, including in tournaments. I did lose that game, but I got pretty far ahead against Gerald, which is a 6.5k Protoss player. But now we're going to test it against the aggressiveness of the Koreans. Now, when it comes to the follow-up, I don't actually know what I want to do yet. I mean, you know, normally you would say, isn't this enough going for freaking 3 gates instantly on the low ground? But there's a bunch of things you can do. You can go for just 6 adepts and then make a couple sentries and transition. That is not really the kind of builds I want to be doing today. So I could, for example, consider going for a 4th gateway, maybe a Stargate to attack with Phoenixes and lift their important units. I could even go for DT, stuff like that. And it just really depends on what I'm going to see from my opponent here. Now, so far, everything seems relatively normal. I didn't actually look at the chrono boost there, which I probably should have looked at. Now, what am I going to make? I can go for Stalkers here. For some reason, I am not quite sure what I saw, but I feel like this is a proxy, so I made Stalkers instead. I'm not sure if like the pylon was delayed or something. I really don't remember what I thought, but I very clearly remember thinking that this was a proxy, so I made a bunch of Stalkers, and I'm going to be looking around my base. Now, this is actually a situation that normally the 3-gate really shines in, because I just have extra units early on. I might not have the tech units that you usually want to deal with proxies, like for example, going up against a proxy robo. You're probably going to want your own immortals at some point, right? You're going to go up against a proxy Stargate, then this kind of build is going to be fine because you just want Stalkers in your mineral line, and that's okay. If you're going to go up against a 4-gate, you're probably going to want immortals as well. What the strength is that you can find your opponent's proxy and shut it down really fast. That's where this really excels. So that's why I'm looking all around my base with the Stalkers, and I've honestly been a little flabbergasted here because I haven't found the proxy. I was so sure that it was going to happen. Something told me that this was going to be a one-base play, but I didn't find a proxy anywhere around my base. Now, it still could be like a Stalker a Stargate in downtown or something like that, you know. I have no idea. And here there is indeed no expansion, and that makes me believe that this is going to be a one-base solid, and I just don't know which one. And that's going to be a little scary, because I kind of need to have, you know, detection for DTs, or maybe like my own immortals for their immortals. It's kind of hard to tell exactly what I need over here. Now, I do have a good amount of Stalkers, pretty good micro on that right Stalker over there, but I actually don't know whether I want to be trading here or not. I decided to go for it anyway. I think the Stalker trades were probably 1-to-1, and now I'm going to get the Scout, and this is when I see the Twilight Council, and that is pretty scary because Blink is actually not something I have ever faced with this build. The only time I've played against a one-base Blinkolin is when I was playing Fast Expand with Stargate, and then I had absolutely no chance of holding it, and here I'm actually scared. I mean, this is a very strange scenario. I didn't find a proxy pylon, but he's still playing one-base Blink off of at least 3 gateways, probably 4. And this means that since I don't have tech units, his Stalkers are just going to be better than mine. Now, I was thinking about adding a Nexus there for a second, but I didn't really know what I should be doing here. I have my 3 gateways. I have my Robo on the way. I could make an expansion, which obviously at some point I will need. Now, I do find his Stalkers over there. Wasn't very happy to find out that his Blink was already finished, by the way. And one thing I 100% should have done in hindsight is make a battery here. I'm pretty crazy for doing this without a battery. Now I see... Oh, that's actually more Stalkers. I was about to say 6, but he has freaking 9 Stalkers over there. Now, my micro has been decent, kind of negating the Blink. But Blink Stalkers are pretty much always going to come out ahead in this trade, especially because you can blink and dodge a projectile. It's not just that you save the unit from... from dying, but you also can dodge a projectile, which means you waste a projectile. Now, I got my first Immortal over here. The Immortal is going to be fantastic here against the Stalkers, but he has so many that it's always going to be a little scary. And warp in a couple more Stalkers. Maybe I could have gone for something like Zealot Sentry instead. He blinks on top of the Immortal and kills it, but he does lose a lot of Stalkers in the process. The problem is that I made a Warp Prism behind this, which I don't think was a mistake. But maybe I should have gone for the Immortal instead because he dove a little earlier and now I don't have the second Immortal and that is going to be GG for game number 1 and it's a rare opportunity for you guys to see me get out-cheesed. Game number 2 is going to be with Zerg and maybe to your surprise, I actually felt a little more confident here with Zerg than with my Protoss. And it's not because I think my Zerg is better than my Protoss, but I do think that... in PvP especially, it can get a little chaotic, right? Like, it's kind of hard to do a consistent PvP cheese. Like, in the last game, I went for an absolutely absurd build by going for 3 gates, and then my opponent still out-cheesed me. If he would have cheesed me in a different way, like the Proxy Robo, I would have found the pylon, and then we win instead. But he went for Blink, so he wins instead, and it's just all a little bit chaotic. And with Zerg... my cheeses somehow feel a little more consistent. They're maybe not as, consistently powerful as my Protoss cheeses, but they are more consistent. And this game, I kind of pulled out a classic. I decided to go for the 13-pull proxy hatch. It's a cheese build I invented, which I'm not sure if I should be proud of because it's probably not that great, but I did get a lot of dubs with it in the past. And actually, my claim to fame with this build is that once I had a bootcamp with my Dutch Zerg friend, and I told him to do this build when he ran into Showtime, which was the best European Protoss at the time, on the ladder. And he actually won and got like plus 50 MMR or something like that. So maybe the build is pretty decent. The entire premise of this build is you have a lot of fast links, and then you build a hatchery in your opponent's wall. Just as a little bit of a tip for you guys is you usually do not want to do this on a map with a ramp, because there's a really good chance you can't actually put the hatchery in the wall. Here, I kind of got lucky that I could. If the gateway was on the other side, it already would have been like a little weird. And even now, well, now I think it's okay because he decided to go for the pylon in the wall, which is the way a lot of Protoss players wall these days. But for me, this is going to be all right. Now, he does have a Zealot out already. This is always going to be a bit of a crazy micro battle because you want to target the pylon. The Zealot has to run away. Now, he did get a little bit too far forward, and there we are going to get the surround on the Zealot, which is very, very nice. I'm not going to lie, for the first little bit of this, I didn't even realize that this wasn't a full wall. I was so surprised when the probes actually came to help the Zealot. Now, here we get another surround on the Zealot, which is quite nice. Only going to lose 1 Zergling for that. And what I'm very happy to see here is that my opponent actually went for the cannon defense. I'm going to be able to take down this cannon, I believe. 5 Zerglings are strong, but the cannon is also pretty strong, but we are going to be able to take that down. Only lose 1 Zergling, I believe. If you target fired perfectly, he wouldn't be able to kill another one. And now I'm going to do this. I'm going to build a hatchery on the natural location. So first of all, we forced a massive overreaction, right? He made 2 gateways, forge, lost 2 Zealots, we got in, canceled a cannon, and now we're also going to build a hatchery on his natural, which is going to delay his base forever. Especially considering most Protoss players do what he just did. They build an Adept, which is the right choice, by the way, because an Adept is super good against Zerglings, and you can counterattack with it very fast. Downside of the Adept, it does not kill buildings fast at all. I even want to say it doesn't kill buildings. I don't know how many Adepts you need, especially without glaives, to kill a freaking hatchery, but it's a pretty painful amount. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to do a follow-up that is kind of similar to the way I play 2v2. So I'm going to go for a fast third hatchery, and then I'm just going to do some kind of weird mass circling stuff, pretty much. Now, I do have to be careful with doing this, because mass circlings, when you go up against Protoss, has some very powerful counters, like, for example, Glaive Adepts, Charged Archon. You could be very far ahead and make mass circlings and just lose to that, so you have to be careful. Now, here I decided to cancel the hatchery. I could have left it up, because it would have really delayed that base forever. But at the same time, I kind of want to be able to afford my queens, get my buildings up, get my gases and stuff. Like, if you look at my minerals right now already, you can tell it's way more comfortable that I actually canceled that. So I'm going to be pretty happy with this one for sure. Evolution Chamber is also going to be able to deny that base forever. And one little thing about the Evolution Chamber that's very nice is that it's still going to spawn Brootlings for pretty cheap. So when he kills that, if his worker that wants to take the natural is too close, there is a chance he loses the worker and he's going to get his base denied for another like 15 seconds or so. Now, he does have the battery, sadly for me. Here we go. I'm going to try to kill the probe. Adepts actually killed a couple Brootlings. If he didn't have that on the mineral wall command, there is a decent chance we would have been able to kill this. Now, this Overlord is getting me a pretty ridiculous amount of scouting, by the way. Like, I saw that he only had one gas in his main base originally. I was first scared of like a proxy Stargate or something, because I don't remember if he scouted me, and if he did, where the probe went. A lot of those times I just forget about these things. And now I saw something very important here, right? I scouted the Twilight Council, and not just the Twilight Council. I noticed that he was making the upgrade on the forge. And why this scares me is because for Glaive Adepts, this actually doesn't matter. Glaive Adepts are going to two-shot Zerglings anyway. I mean, okay, if you get +1, it's always going to be good, right? But against my mass Zergling stuff, it doesn't matter that much. But +1 Zealots, two-shot Lings instead of 3. So that is going to be extremely painful. Now, I have enough Zerglings here to be able to deal with these Adepts, I believe, so I don't have to worry about it too much. He is not going to finish those. Adepts are really good against Zerglings, like you can see here, so I have to be careful. But anyway, because I saw the Twilight Council in combination with the +1, I decided to go for the Roach Warren instead and switch my build up to, instead of going for a mass Ling kill, I'm going to go for a mass Roach kill here. Which is not very on brand for me. I'm aware of that. I don't usually, you know, play roaches or like build any roaches to begin with, but here I felt like the time was right for me to go for a mass roach counterattack. Now, I really had no intention of letting this get to a macro game. I really just wanted to find the best killer move possible, and I think the mass roaches are going to be the way over here. What I'm trying to balance now is I'm trying to figure out how many workers I can build before spamming roaches like crazy. Now, this was actually surprising to me. Here you can see that he's actually going to go for mass adepts. He has a good amount of gateways. And yeah, once again, especially with the +1 attack, I know he probably just built it because he had the forge already. I really would have expected like either mass zealots or charged Archon out of this. Oh, by the way, if you're going to counter a zealot attack, it's definitely better to go for Balings. At least I think so. Just because it's a little easier to get. Like, roaches can still definitely lose to zealots. However, if we're going to go up against adepts, then I feel like the roaches are better all of a sudden, because roaches are just really good against them. The way I decided to approach this was to keep a bunch of roaches on the outside of my base, and then put a drone in the wall. Kind of like you would in a PvP, you know? Like against Protoss, you always want to have a probe in the wall, so when they shade the adepts, you can block it with a building. Sadly, only Terran has the privilege of having a depot that, you know, you can shut at any time. Here, I'm going to have to use a worker just like Protoss. And here, he can't really finish this because I have more than enough roaches. He's going to try to get through here. But this is so many roaches that I have already. My third mineral line is getting absolutely annihilated, by the way. I didn't realize that for a second. But he is going to lose so many workers over here. I have a couple of roaches over on that side. My roach speed is going to finish very shortly, by the way. And I don't think he's really going to have a good answer for that. And I think this was definitely a good enough hold. Like, keep in mind, I have my entire setup already. Normally, if you go up against mass adepts, you don't even have a lair yet. You're just making Ling Roach. Here, I don't just have a lair. I've had it for a little while, and my roach speed is about to finish. I have 119 supply of pretty much pure roach. I mean, I have a couple Zerglings in there, but it's really all going to be about the roaches, and now we're just going to rally them across. If he warps in sentries, we can always morph some Ravagers, but I think we're just going to get in here right away. Actually, it would have been a cool move to go for burrow movement, by the way. That's another cheesy tactic that I just thought of that I can maybe use for the next time. But here, as you can see, my strategy of at least switching it up to going for mass roach instead of mass zergling is going to be the perfect idea. I'm targeting the robo down, so no disruptor or immortal can finish, and the score is 1-1. final game in the series is going to be with Terran. The score is 1-1, and now I'm playing my most powerful race. Now, just in case you guys are wondering, by the way, a lot of these online cups these days, they use different maps than the ladder. It's mostly because the current ladder map pool consists out of 6 new maps, and then 3 just absolutely ancient maps that they decided to bring back. And the problem is that a lot of the community is upset because we do have a pretty good map making scene that are doing their best to make maps, and then instead of putting new maps in there, they just use maps from like freaking 2016 and stuff. So a lot of these tournaments are actually using 9 new maps instead of just 6. So if you guys are wondering what on earth these maps are, these are maps made by official map makers from the Thin Liquid map contest, I believe. And I believe the last game was played on one of the new maps, and this one as well. This one is called Star Child. The other one was called Erreholm, which I have no idea how you're actually supposed to pronounce that, but it is what it is. Now, this game I decided to go for a little bit of a stranger cheese. I'm proxying 1 barracks, and you might notice that it's not in prime proxy reaper position. So, a very common cheese these days against Protoss is to go for 2 racks Marauder proxy. And the cheese is actually quite potent. A lot of Protoss players think that's broken. A lot of Terran players think it sucks. It's one of those cheeses, you know, where it's either absolutely broken or it absolutely sucks, and people don't really tend to have an opinion in between. I am actually of the opinion that it's not that great of a cheese. I think a lot of Protoss players, they tend to handle proxies a little bit greedier because they're used to the proxy metas from the past. But these days, proxies are not that common anymore. Proxy Reaper is not that scary anymore. So I think they can just scout around a little more. They don't have to be as greedy, and then it's a lot easier to deal with. But anyway, this game I decided to do a little bit of a mind game version on that. And I'm going for 1 barracks proxy Marauder. And the idea was that these days, because 2x Marauder is so prevalent, they would overreact, and then I already have a factory and potentially even a starport at home. And I think that would be a pretty good transition. At the same time, if they wouldn't take it too seriously, let's say they don't make a battery, they'll send Stalkers down the ramp, they might lose it to the Marauders instantly, and then they either lose the Nexus to just a simple 1-rax proxy, or they have to pull probes. And in that case, they're just going to be losing all of their probes, right? And then they might have their Nexus alive, but they're not going to have probes to mine from it. So either way, that sounds like a pretty good dub to me. In this case, we can already see, or at least it looks like, that my opponent did not build a pylon on the low ground, which is quite surprising. Now here, my Marauders, I decided to not attack the Nexus right away. I decided to go up the ramp first, just to see if I could sneak in a couple probe kills. Now here, I was actually surprised to see that he already had 2 Stalkers. The reason why he did have 2 Stalkers is not because he has a second gateway, it's because he was 100% expecting a Proxy Reaper. And this was actually quite interesting to me, because he didn't even seem to consider the possibility of a Proxy Marauder at all, even though he scouted my factory kind of late. The moment he scouted my factory, he should definitely know that, this cannot be a Proxy 2x Marauder, because you cannot afford anything behind that. But he didn't even build a pylon on the low ground initially, so either his way of defending Proxy 2x Marauder is to just give up the natural immediately, right, and defend in the main base, or he just forgot it existed, or he just thought I had too many workers for it to be Proxy 2x Marauder. I'm not quite sure what he was thinking, actually. Truthfully, even against like a Proxy Reaper, I think having a pylon on the low ground is pretty nice. But anyway, here we are. The Nexus falls to a simple 1-rax proxy. But we are still on 1 base ourselves, so even though we just killed, his economic opener completely, we killed a Nexus, which is for on the minerals, keep in mind wasn't cancelled, of course. We are still on a relatively small economy ourselves. I see 4 Stalkers up the ramp, which is definitely not something we want to be fighting against. But now I'm going to go for my Hellion drop follow-up. I was actually considering going for a Hellbat attack behind this, by the way. I thought it could be... Okay, there we go. I thought it'd be a pretty cool idea to just straight up go for, some kind of Penguin Brothers follow-up kind of thing. But now this all of a sudden is pretty scary, because he's making Immortals, and he has 3 gateways, right, as you can tell. And I have Marauders as my main DPS, which are really not going to be that good against Immortals. So at this point, I wasn't entirely sure about my position in the game. Here I was really thinking I could just kill that pylon really fast, but then I saw he had another pylon behind it, which was quite painful. Probably going to throw down a couple of force fields, but luckily for me, the force fields only caught the Hellions and not actually the Marauders, which is going to make this a lot nicer for me. And now my stim finished. I'm not quite sure if you guys realized I was building that, but I straight up built stim from that proxy barracks and it actually finished, which is funny. Now, my decision to hold back at home is going to be tanks and reactored Vikings. Reactored Vikings might sound stupid. The idea behind this was if he goes for a prism, which he definitely will, right? I'm not quite sure if I saw it already, but they almost always go for a prism with this. Then I will be able to shut it down pretty easily with the reactor Viking. So the tank falls, that is to be expected. I'm doing a little bit of a SCV drill over here. And it looks like we have ourselves a full base raid. I got 2 more Vikings. Vikings do a lot of damage against mechanical, which is nice. I there finally canceled my command center, which is obviously the right idea. Here I'm microing the Vikings a little bit. And now I don't actually have that many units left. I have a couple SCVs, and these SCVs are actually super meaningful because they're going to be able to body block the Immortals from reaching my tank or my Vikings. Here you can see he's trying to find my tank. I can move it back a little bit. That allowed the Viking to do a lot of extra damage, and we're going to be able to kill that Immortal as well. Now, even though we killed his entire economy, he definitely was able to build up a decent amount of units in between now and then. I don't know how many. I don't know. I would guess there's at least 1 more Robo unit, so I would say either 1 Immortal or 1 Prism. I see something flying into my main base right now, which I didn't expect. Turns out that it was both an Immortal and a Prism, a little bit more than I expected. And now my army is 6 Marauders. I'm medevac. That Viking is definitely gonna die, but I do still have my buildings. Now, is that meaningful right now? No, because I cannot build anything from them. There you could tell I spent all of my money on Marauders because I realized I wasn't going to be able to get any better units out like a Viking from here. But I can run away, or fly away rather, with my command center, fly it somewhere else. Keep in mind he has to protect his buildings because StarCraft 2 still has, you know, a win condition, which is to kill every single building. And if he doesn't follow my command center, I'll kill his buildings. If he follows my Marauders, I'll be able to rebuild my army. He realizes that he's in a completely lost position. And after a very chaotic series, we take the win 2-1. The second match of the tournament is going to be against Bjorn, the world champion of 2016 and still one of the best Terran players in the world. Now, I'm playing Protoss for the first game, and I can give you guys a little bit of backstory context here. Bjorn is actually one of the, how would I say this? One of my best content victims, as I've beaten him a good amount of times with my, well, with Terran mostly. I also beat him in 1 macro. Actually, I'm not sure if I ever showed that to you guys. I beat him in a macro game with Zerg, which was pretty epic. Though historically with my Protoss, I've really sucked against Bjorn. And that's because Bjorn is one of those really good aggressive Terrans, and my Protoss is just not solid at all. I remember trying to play a macro game against him, and let's say the macro game ended in like 5 minutes, okay? We didn't actually get there, so that's my history playing against him with Protoss. And this game, I don't actually have a lot of good cheeses with Protoss against Terran. I just decided to wing it and build my gateway in the middle of the map in his scouting path. Because why the hell not, you know? This is the kind of build that I just vibe with. It feels very mind gamey, it feels stupid, it feels cheesy, while at the same time, feeling like it's still pretty potent. And what I like about this in particular is just that very often when Terrans will scout it, they'll start panicking. But in the end, it's still just 1 gateway. It's not like I'm proxying 4 gates, you know. They don't have to do anything crazy to respond to this. This is going to be a very interesting interaction here at the start, because my opponent here is going for double gas, and he has not SCV scouted. So there is a chance that I can keep him at home, and he won't even realize that my gateway is so close to his base. It feels so weird to call this like a proxy gate, because it's obviously way closer to his base than a normal gateway would be, but it's also not like it's next to his base. It's still slightly closer to my own base to his. I pretty much built it in the middle of the map, if you look at it. Like, it couldn't be much... It could be where my Zealot is right now, but besides that, it really couldn't be much closer to the middle of the map. And now I'm going to be chrono boosting some Stalkers. Now, my idea here was to see where the Reaper went, and then try to dodge it with my Zealot, and then deny his command center for a bit. If he sees my Zealot, he's gonna pull his Reaper back, right? Well, at least that's what you would expect, right? And then he's not gonna know that my Stalker is gonna be so fast on the follow-up. And that timing was crazy. For the first time doing this build on a YOLO, that timing was pretty freaking crazy. Look at that freaking SCV, that's a little bit of a misclick there. I could have damaged that a little more. But now my Stalker is already here. And there's not that many units he can build that can actually kill this. Like, he's gonna have to make a Cyclone or just a lot of Reaper Hellion, or I'm actually not quite sure what he would like to build right now. Now, I can see that he's making another command center. That's a little bit of nice scouting for me. He's going to pull the SCV, so we managed to kill one of them. Maybe one more would be nice. Barely not going to get that. Now my second Stalker is already here. Now I have to say, guys, it is incredibly hard for me to say, you know, how this game is going. Like, I feel like I've done a decent amount of damage just by forcing him to cancel these command center. I killed one SCV, and his build was already not economic. But is this like, am I massively winning? Is this an even game? Like, I actually have no idea, honestly. If I look at this from the observer perspective right now, I would say that we are probably slightly behind. And the reason why I say that is because if he was going for, let's say, a Reaper expand, a fast Reaper expand, or maybe even a Marine expand, then we could do more damage. He would be forced to make bunkers. He would be forced to pull the SCVs longer. Now he really didn't have that much downtime. Like, his CC got cancelled when he started it for, like, I don't know how long he started it for, like 5 seconds or 10 seconds or something like that. It was really not that crazy. Now his Cyclone here, he moved it a little too far forward, so I'm going to be able to kill that Cyclone, which is very nice. I'm also going to be able to get another Reaper. Might be able to get the Hellion as well. It looked like that Hellion was going to die. That Reaper is definitely going to survive. And I think this Reaper is finally going to scout that my gateway is down here in Tokyo. And yeah, I mean, what I said earlier still stands. I think that his build was, yeah, not disturbed that much. He lost 100 minerals canceling the command center. He lost one SCV, and that's about it for me proxying a gateway and delaying my own expansion for a while. So once again, I would say this game is either even or bad for me. I really cannot tell. On the flip side, though, this is the kind of game that I am really comfortable in. Like, I feel like I have the map control. I killed a lot of his units. I'm going to be able to expand freely. And it actually feels pretty chill. Now, he is a tank on the high ground. Sadly, he is going to get 2 hits off with that. Maybe I can deny the bunker. That would be pretty cool. There we go. That, I have no idea how that Stalker suddenly moved into tank range. It really felt like it wasn't. Now we're going to be able to pick off at least one Marine there, which is nice. And now I'm going to have to decide on my follow-up. I'm going to go for a Forge and a couple of extra gateways. The only concern I have right now is that it's going to be Banshees. And I don't mean as in that's the only way we can lose this game. I more mean like that's the thing that would mess me up instantly, you know? Like in the macro game, once again, Bjorn is a better player than me, a way better player than my Protoss, and I still think we're going to be slightly behind, so it's not my only concern. But if it's not Banshees, I think we're going to be okay to play a little bit of a macro game here at least. So that build, for me, is a build that I'm definitely going to try again, because that was cool. I mean, we're playing against Bjorn, and a fantastically good micro Terran player, very aggressive. And, I mean, at least it worked out decently enough, you know? Like, it obviously could have been better, but if it goes this well against Bjorn, especially on my first time doing this, with admittedly a kind of mediocre follow-up, I think I could have gotten my blink faster. I didn't have to make the battery and stuff. That all would have been a little bit nicer for me. I feel like I can transform this into a pretty sick build. Maybe I can even have a new mainstay Protoss build here, at least for Terran. As you guys know, I like to keep it cheesy. I'm not afraid to make a cheese build my main build. I'm going to build my gateway in downtown every PvT from now on until I have reasons enough to believe that it's pretty trash. For now, I don't have those reasons, so I'm pretty happy. Now, I have 6 gateways. I did decide to add the Robo eventually. Not just for detection, by the way. I also just want to have a Prism. My idea for this game was, if I play a very standard game where I go up to Colossus and I kind of kite him back and forth, Disruptors, that's the kind of game that a good Protoss player would play. I don't think that's the kind of game I would win against Bjorn. So my idea for this game was to just make an absolutely chaotic playstyle happen. I'm planning to make Prisms, Zealots, and Stalkers, and barely anything else. I'm going to make upgrades for them. Charge and Blink are already finished, I believe. I think my +1 is finished. I'm going to keep building upgrades and then just send my units everywhere, make the most chaotic play ever happen, and then hopefully we can win like that. Now, I'm seeing how big his army is. His army looks bigger than I would like it to be, since I only have 86 supply. That's the best way I can put it. Though I do already have about 11 Zealots, and I have my 4th base on the way. Actually, really, I think my macro was pretty good behind this, you know? it's very easy to just fall apart and not get the macro on point after this. Now, I decided to blink over here just because I didn't see his army. I barely found his medevac. Very happy that I found those medevacs, by the way, because if I didn't, he would have sent those into my main base, and that would have been very hard for me to deal with. Now, I have a bunch of zealots in his main base, which is very nice. Hopefully, he doesn't have units at home. I'm going to be able to kill at least that tank, and sadly, he did have a lot of units back at home, and that's going to be a little painful for me to deal with. I'm going to get these 2 zealots out of here, or try to, you know, have them survive as long as possible, and I put 4 in the prism. Now, his drop did hit my main base, but right now I already have my stalkers there, of course. That's going to be alright. Should be able to kill at least one of those widow mines before it fires. I do. And I think together with the battery, I could even recharge that if I want to. It doesn't seem like it's necessary. We are going to be able to defend that attack. My zealots traded, I want to say, decently. Really weren't the best trades ever, of course. As you can see, he was very well positioned for most of that. But he was pretty decent. He still doesn't have a 3rd base. My 4th base, I think, is about to finish, or it has already finished. And I think it's looking pretty alright. His 3rd base is going to land now, which is a little bit faster than I would have liked to see. Now, here I can see a couple medevacs still. Surprisingly, I had enough stalkers to one-shot those. Now, killing 2 medevacs is super, super nice. It would have been nice if they were full. I don't think there were actually that many units inside. I think he survived with like 3 marines or something. But still, killing 2 medevacs there is super, super nice. And now I was considering doing something absolutely insane. I was about to blink under those tanks and kill those. That is sadly not going to happen. I'm glad I didn't, because his bio was freaking close. And now I'm going to add to the chaos by flying to his natural with the prism instead of just keeping it around the main base. So I'm going to drop those over here. I'm going to... Okay, I was about to warp in zealots, but then I felt like his army was a little bit too close. Here I'm going to attack this base again. It's actually super annoying for him to defend that base. I'm trying to target the 3rd base. I don't think I'm going to be able to get that. I'm going to warp at home, just because I don't think warping in there would have been a good idea. He has a lot of marines there. Marines have a lot of DPS, and it would have been a little painful. Now I'm going to add a couple more gateways over here, because I notice I'm getting a lot of resources. And these last 2 minutes have somehow been me outplaying Beyond with my Protoss, alright? Like, the multitasking was good, I killed a lot of workers, and I feel like we went from being slightly behind to at least to maybe even or even slightly ahead. It's kind of hard for me to read these games because I don't usually play these. My games usually end way before this mark, even if it's only the 10-minute mark. But I feel like we've definitely gotten ourselves maybe a slight advantage, or we even here. Now, we are going to lose the Prism, which is very unfortunate. I think I should probably rebuild that instantly because they're very good. And now if you're wondering why I'm attacking, it's because of those Widow Mines are clumped up. I thought I could get some really good shots on the bio. The Medevacs did take a little damage. I managed to target down 2 of the Medevacs as well. And now I have my Immortals on top of those Marauders fighting. A lot of SCVs are going to fall here. Now, these kind of trades are always questionable because I'm probably going to lose the Immortals here. You would think that this trade without question was good, but losing the Immortals means my core army is going to be a little weaker. Now, I'm going to be able to target that Viking on the way out. And I do still have 9 gateways. My army is pretty much non-existent right now, but this is, you know, kind of just the way I like to play Protoss, to be honest. I mean, I'm going to be able to warp in those. I have about 15 Zealots now. His saturation is still pretty decent. Not exactly happy seeing that, but it is what it is. Now, I'm starting my 5th base over here. Should probably get a couple more gateways here. Plus 2 attack is going to finish. I feel like that should have been finished before... Oh, wait, I got armor instead. Okay, never mind. I feel like I started it ages ago, so I started to wonder, did I cancel that on accident? But I actually... I'm pretty sure I canceled it and make +1 armor instead. Now, here I'm going to go for the tank kill. I was actually going to go for both, but instead I'm going to just kill one of them and try to dip with whatever I can. One thing that's really good to do against Terran, by the way, you guys might wonder if it's good for me to just keep attacking like this. I just know from experience as Terran, here I rallied my probes on accent, classic Mark mistake actually. Terrans, you want to force them to stim as much as possible, because Medevacs, even though it feels like they have unlimited energy, they really don't. If you're in a position where you have to stim back and forth all the time, especially when you sniped a couple Medevacs already, like I have done in this game, I think I sniped about 4 Medevacs or so already. Oh, that was a really bad fight for me. I didn't realize he was going to be right up there, so that is definitely painful. But the more he stims, the weaker his army is going to be over time. There, I'm going to get into the mineral line. The sad part for me is that I lost a lot of units to those EMP plus stim there. Like, I felt like my army was starting to approach, yeah, maybe even snowball territory, right? Because I had a lot of supply. I think I definitely lost like 15 supply in Zealots plus shields on the remaining Zealots on that fight. So that's definitely a little painful. This is another one of those fights where I'm trying to fight before he was stimmed and he was not paying attention. There, I managed to target a ghost, which is very nice. Now I'm going to start warping in again. You might think me warping into my main base is crazy, But the thing is, I want to create chaos. Like, I'm not going to win this game just straight up. Like, I need chaos. And now I'm going to do what is the most annoying thing about going up against Protoss is then just kiting your freaking bio units with their stalkers all the time. Now, I saw a couple Widowmines burrow, and this is when it started to look like I was going to lose this game. In fact, I was pretty sure that this game at this point was lost, but I still did have some counterplay. I do have 3 Immortals, and I'm still warping into the main base. Like, the thing is, I have way more production than him, so even if I get just decent trade, it's gonna be alright. I got my Stalkers blinking into his 4th base, which is really not something you usually see, but his entire economy on the 3rd base is gone right now. He's not mining from that base at all. Sadly for me, he is gonna be able to kill my base here. And this is a pretty important part of my economy. Now, I do have the 3 Immortals. That Widowmine actually targeted the Marines really well. And that Widowmine also splashed on his own. Dude, that Widowmine is actually were my most valuable units in this entire game, I think. Those Stalkers seem to have killed that entire mineral line, which is freaking crazy. My 3rd base is also alive, by the way, which is absolutely insane. Now, I decided to go for it because I lost a lot of eco there. And even though you're gonna say I also killed a lot of eco, the truth is that I need to be a high eco player here. Like, I'm playing Protoss with not the best of units, and now I found myself a pretty good fight here because his units are so low HP. You always want to heal up. I'm going to get a couple medevacs and a couple ghosts as well. Now, these are the kind of fights that you want to be very careful with. The only reason I blinked in here is just because I could kill a couple medevacs, but those Widowmines and Marauders absolutely destroyed my Stalkers. He's going to chase my Immortals, and now I need to do my best target fire. Notice how low HP those Marauders are, and my Immortals are actually shredding those Marauders somehow. And now I have all of these reinforcements. My 3rd base still has no probes on it, so my eco is pretty small. But I just managed to kill so many of his units, and he has 2 medevacs that are pretty much empty on energy. Now, I need to be very careful over here, because especially with Marauders with slow, you can be in trouble fast. He's pulling the SCVs, but I have a Zealot Warpin that's going to be fantastic against SCVs. I'm using my Immortals to target fire the Marauders over here. Need to be afraid of his stutter step. Like, I need to keep falling back and warping in more units. Once again, he needs to stim every single time this happens. And it's going to take like 200 HP off of his army. That command center is almost dead. I'm going to target fire it down now. That command center dies. Not the biggest deal ever because he can fly his command center over from the main, but we have done it. And I can confirm to you guys, for a lot of this part, when I was playing this game live, I actually thought I was ahead. I looked at the replay and I was straight up far behind in some times in the game. I actually just outplayed Beyond and won in a macro game with my Protoss well being behind. That is absolutely freaking crazy. The second game of the series is going to be on ley lines with Zerg. Now, I mentioned in the last game that I beat him with Zerg once. And let me just tell you how that game went, because it was very uThermal. Let me just put it that way. So I started the game with I was actually playing this game with friends on voice chat. So the game started with a Spinecrawler rush, right? Then I got pretty far ahead from the Spinecrawler rush, believe it or not. Then my friends told me, you should just go Mutas, because then you win for free. So I, spent all of my economy making like 6 Mutalisks. Turns out he felt like building Cyclones, so he had like 7 Cyclones by the time I arrived. I lost my Mutas, and then I was suddenly behind. And then, because of some miracle, I don't know how, I ended up owning him in a Mutaling Bane game without creep, without upgrades, against upgraded Bio-Terran. I showed this game to Rainer. You guys might know him, ex-world champion. And he also couldn't believe that I would win. He said, I swear, my Mutalisks don't do things like that. And it was crazy. I'm not quite sure if my GBT performance like that will ever be repeated, but it did happen that time. Now, this game, I'm going to go for the Spinecrawler rush again. On one hand, I would say that this is a bad idea, because the game that I did beat him with my Zerg, I Spinecrawler rushed him. On the other hand, I do still think it is my strongest ZVT cheese. And realistically, he could have forgotten about that game by now. I mean, he definitely remembers that he lost to my Zerg once, but is he really going to remember that I did a freaking Spinecrawler rush on... I don't even remember the map, so I'm not quite sure. So I decided to just go for it again. Surprisingly, I saw no SCV scout. At this point, he will already have seen the hatchery, by the way, because a normal Reaper expand or Marine expand, whatever, command center goes down at like 140. You always build it on a low ground, so he would have already seen it by now. So even if he didn't scout my base, he know that this, well, it's underway. He doesn't know if this is going to be a Spinecrawler rush or, fake proxy hatchery or whatever. He actually has no idea as of this moment. I'm going to start my 2 spines already. My circling speed is slightly delayed. I actually noticed this just now. That's a little bit of a problem because circling speed, you do want that as fast as possible with this build order. Now, I already see something that I think is very problematic for me. And that is that my opponent here is going for a reactor first. Reactor first is the best way of playing against this by far. And trust me, I know this after years of experience doing proxy hatches at this point. Now, there is still something about his particular way of playing that I do like seeing. So, he is trying to defend this on the low ground. In my experience, defending on the low ground is not usually that great because you will get broken eventually, and that is already going to happen now. Notice how he's being very careful with the SCVs. He's trying to pull them back. He doesn't want to lose them right away. He's not really going to be able to out-repair these spines. If he is going to try that, he will just lose his SCVs like that. And now he's going to lose the bunker as well. Didn't quite get the one shot on that Marine, sadly. And now we're going to be able to attack the high ground. But I did lose it. I can't believe this SCV came down here. That must have been an accident. And this is when I realized that we were probably in a little bit of trouble here. So most of the time, they go for the defense on the low ground and they kind of get owned. And then, you know, they get caught off guard by getting owned. And then that's it. Beyond here actually went for an excellent response, which is to delay it by defending on the low ground with a reactor first, but already being prepared for the high ground as well. And that's where it gets problematic for me. Because if that bunker wasn't there, I would have been able to run it with my Zerglings already, would have been able to do a lot of damage, but his bunker was so fast, and I don't think I'm going to... I see a factory with a Tekla there. I don't think I'm going to be able to kill that bunker before the tank finishes. Now, I'm going to try and expand behind this. That is the best way to go about it. He just sieged his tank, and I'm just going to decide to run in here. It seems like those SCVs are barely in a too annoying spot for me to kill. They're all surviving on 1 HP. A couple of them are low, but it looks like that is going to be it for this game. Now, I'm still going to try, because there's always a chance with this kind of build. He lost a couple SCVs, he lost his reactor, his production is not great, but it's admittedly looking rough. My plan here was to just go for +1 Zerglings and just try to swarm him, catch him off guard. He might not realize how many Zerglings I have behind this. He moves to the low ground, we surround him and kill him. That's basically the idea. Now here we definitely don't have enough links yet. I have enough links to contest the amount of Marines, but not with that tank on the high ground over there. So that's what I'm careful of. So now I have 100 gas. I can start +1 melee attack, but I think this is going to be my best moment to go, especially because he scans the Evo chamber. He's not going to be too scared. I'm splitting my Zerglings just so the tank shoots those first, but his micro is very good. He has another tank on the high ground. The splash damage from the tanks is not doing enough on those Marines, and sadly, beyond this time, managed to survive my spine crawler rush. Game number 3 is going to be with my beloved Terran, and this game I'm going to try to do the same build as I did against the Protoss in the last series. And mostly for the reason that, I mean, Proxy Reaper would have been the best cheese that I can do here. I think, you know, especially playing on the NA server, I have like a slight ping advantage. I've won against him with it before, but I just like being cool. So for that reason, we're going to go for a Proxy Marauder as well. Now, Proxy Marauder is a build that I invented myself a long time ago, and then the Korean Terrans took it, made the build better and made it a popular build, and that's also when I stopped using it. I feel like I just like coming up with new stuff that's surprising. I don't usually optimize the build that much. I mean, if you guys watched the last video, you'll know that sometimes I do. Like the Bulldozer build against Protoss is an extremely optimized build that I do enjoy. But for the most part, especially, well, I should clarify that this is about recent times in StarCraft. Back in the day, I loved optimizing builds, but at some point, you know, the meta became kind of stale, and now my mission is just to do absolutely ridiculous stuff and kind of break that. And that's what I did with the Proxy Marauder here. So here I'm going to do my build. Or actually, I'm not going to do my build. I'm going to do the version that the Koreans did to make it better. Because it's actually just a lot better. It's not even close, actually. So here we go. Basically, what they changed is that they skip a couple SCVs, which sounds crazy. Just look at how I do this build. So normally what I would do is I would use it the standard way. I would make another depot right now. I would start concussion cells and marauders. It all feels very natural. What they did instead is they make the factory first before the marauders, and then the thing that's missing, if you look at the resource, you're like, oh, this works out pretty well, but the thing that's missing is the supply depot. So what they changed is that they just skip a couple SCVs. So now you can see I'm 21 out of 23. I can make one more Marauder. I'll have 23 out of 23. And then when the depot finishes, I can make SCVs again. You might wonder why this is actually better. The reason why this is better is because if you do it the other way with the delayed factory, you do actually pretty much just lose to a Reaper. Because one single Reaper can jump into your base and your factory is too late. You can't make a Hellion and you die. That's why you kind of have to do it this way. Now, he did scout my build pretty fast, which, yeah, obviously makes this a little bit rough. Kind of thing. You know what's funny? Looking at the way he sent his Reaper, I was thinking, where could I have placed it instead? But looking at the way he sent his Reaper, maybe I could have placed it the exact same way that I placed my Gateway in game number 1 and just put it in the middle of the path. Now that would be world dumbest placement ever, because if he would, you know, just send an SCV scout, he would see it, and that would be, I would feel like the dumbest person alive if I would have placed my barracks over there. But against him in this specific game, it could have worked. Now if you're wondering why I didn't walk up this ramp, is Björn, to me, clearly is a double gas player. I think he could have made Widow Mines or a bunker, and I just didn't really see the value. I kind of just wanted to fake him out a little bit. At this point, he might even think that this is like 2-Rex Marauder. What I just wanted to do was pretty much just kill his depot for free. Now, he already has a freaking tank. So, I mean, I'm definitely right about him playing double gas. There's no way he could have had that fast tank otherwise. And now this is going to be a bit of a strange game here, because our eco is actually the same, which I know sounds really dumb. I don't think he's built a command center yet. Our eco might actually be slightly better. Okay, no. Our eco is the same because I proxied him and I skipped a couple SCVs. So his eco was better for the past couple minutes. Then my command center is going to be a bit faster and I'll catch up. So it's fair enough to say it's even. The big problem is that he's going to have higher quality units than me because the Marauders are actually pretty much useless here. I know that sounds rough to say, but you don't really make Marauders in TVT, actually. Marauders, yeah, you can proxy with them. If you're playing against a mech opponent, you can build them. Besides that, you don't actually make Marauders. They don't do anything against Marines. Marauder is like a worse Marine in TVT, especially going up against Björn, who I don't think I've ever seen him play mech in my entire life. So I'm pretty sure these Marauders are not going to be too valuable. I am going to start a third command center here as well. And now I am about to make a classic Mark mistake here. I'm going to trade all my Marauders for the Cyclone. And normally, this is really not so bad. I mean, 3 Marauders that were already low HP, that are not going to be super useful in the late game, for a Cyclone that's extremely useful, sounds okay. The problem is that I now cannot really defend attacks very well. Like, the 3 Marauders is just a really nice tanky force to have in the early game. If you get pushed by Marine tank or whatever, it can be pretty useful. Now here I decided to go for a scan. That scan is a little risky. I actually barely don't kill that. I just thought, didn't I just hit? I feel like I heard a sound of the Cyclone, but I didn't see a shot. And I didn't get a kill. I feel like that medevac would have died if I hit it, or did he just repair it perfectly in time? I'm not quite sure. Now here I made another mistake by losing the Cyclone over there. That is actually pretty rough, because that Cyclone is my anti-air, and that could cost me. Like, I've played a lot of games against Björn before in TVT, and overall I feel pretty confident in macro games, but he is a bit of a demon when it comes to the early harassment and the attacks and stuff. So losing my Cyclones, that might actually be even worse than losing 3 Marauders, which is a little painful. I do still have my 2 Hellions on the top side. Those are just checking around for, you know, if he's attacking me via the middle or if he's dropping on the top side. That's both going to be, you know, a little bit of an outpost, I guess you could say. Just going to keep some nice vision over there. And now I'm going to start building my extra factories already. And he is pushing me. Now, this kind of pushes would be pretty defendable. The problem is that he can siege my main base and maybe hit my factories from down below. That is really the biggest problem here. And now this is where I really needed the Cyclone, guys, because he's going to be able to drop me everywhere. And yeah, without the Cyclone, I don't know if we can actually stop this. Now here he's making a little bit of a mistake here. He's going to lose a lot of Marines for that, which is very, very nice. I think he saved like 2 of those. Now he did attack me at the front. He has a couple Ravens. I do have enough auto turrets for this. So even though he disabled my tanks, I will be able to kill every single tank there, but I lost all of my SGVs. And once again, I don't have that Cyclone anymore. In fact, I didn't even have money to build a Cyclone all this time. I have one auto turret that I can drop. He's most likely to either just run away or pick up his Marines. He's gonna walk away. And this has already been too much damage, I think, for sure. Now, the way I'm playing, you always have a bit of an extra chance of winning the game, because I basically have a lot of tanks in air control, and tanks pretty much beat everything in TVT that's on the ground. Here, you know, just to make fun with my opponent, I am suggesting a very realistic buff to Terran. I think everyone thinks tanks need to buff red. Gotta love those turtle mech players. As you can see, Björn agreed wholeheartedly with that. Now, let's see. The way he was moving his medevac just now, it really looked like he had an army above there, but he didn't. That's why I scanned. And now I'm gonna move out with, admittedly, a pretty killer army. I mean, I don't have a lot of anti-air, but I do have 4 tanks. And keep in mind, I think I traded 1 tank for 3 earlier. I'm pretty sure I only lost 1. It sounds dumb to say only because I also lost my entire mineral line, but in terms of tank count, I think I traded 3 against 1. Now he's gonna go for this, but because I have auto turrets, I can actually kill his army over here, so this is gonna be a very good initial trade, especially with the auto turrets as well. I can save myself against him dropping on top of my units, and this was an absolutely insane trade for me. Now, you must have at least 1 or 2 tanks behind this. That's gonna be the biggest problem. I decided to just siege in range of the tank so I can take that down easily. Sadly for me, I don't actually have auto turrets there. Even 1 auto turret would be so nice against these SCVs. Look at me, I'm just desperately trying to drop an auto turret. I finally get an auto turret over here, but sadly I did lose all of my tanks, and that was all the power I had. And I'm still going to try to push forward over here because I do have a decent amount of tanks, but he has a lot of bio units. And judging by regular TVT builds, oh, that's so many marauders showing up. He might even have 1-1 on those units as well. He's going to drop on top of my army, and he has more than enough units. And sadly for us, we are not going to win today, but I'm still very proud of my run. We beat Björn in a macro game with Protoss well being behind. The Zerg and Terran cheese didn't work out, but there was definitely a chance for us to win this best of 3, which is good enough for me, and that's going to be it for today. If you guys enjoyed this run, make sure to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all for the next video. Adios.